let's talk a little bit about Bird's recordings. I was reading your book yesterday. You mentioned how at some point Norman Granz kind of took control over what Bird was recording, Chuck, and that might have hindered him in some way. For example, you have in your book how Roy Haynes acknowledges that for whatever reason Norman Granz didn't want to hire him. Therefore, Buddy Rich ended up being on a number of Verve recordings that Norman Granz produced. Do you think in some ways Norman Granz held Bird back, Chuck?
Well, he held him back, I think, creatively, but he also advanced his career with his appearance at Jazz Philharmonic, and the fact that he recorded for the Verve label, which paid him good royalties. And he sold a lot more records with Norman Granz, but Roy Haynes was very upset because he wouldn't let him use his normal quintet. He would want to populate it with other artists that really, they were great musicians, but they weren't in pocket with Bird. And I think Bird's career took a change there. What really caused, ironically, his string recordings were the most successful recordings that he did. But it cost him his quintet, it cost him his group, because when he'd go out on the road and play with the string sections or play in Birdland, Red Rodney wouldn't have a gig. And so his band drifted off one by one so they can make a living. And that forced Bird, when he toured, to go out as a solo, and he was playing with a lot of musicians and soloists and rhythm sections that were just not up to his standards. And that was a problem for him later in his career.
Sorry, Chuck. Yeah, that was the beginning of this all-star band's mess. I shouldn't say mess, but this whole concept of the all-star band, where the promoter picks his quote-unquote dream band. Because Art Blakey had told me about how over the years they wanted him to ditch the Jazz Messengers and come on and just do this all-star thing. You'll make more money, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Art was there, and so, this was an old story to him. And he held onto the Jazz Messengers, because he just believed in that group thing. And the only time he did it was the the Jazz Giants, at Monk and Sonny Stitt, Al McKibben. That was the beginning of this whole concept, Brett and Chuck. We've seen pretty much our whole life this whole all-star concept. CTI did it, and they had all the artists touring together with this super band. The super band. What was that? That cigarette company.
Philip Morris.
Philip Morris. All these type of things. They really, gave musicians a really nice payday and some high visibility. But the whole thing of an organized unit kind of got hurt really bad. And I was lucky enough to hear stories from Art Blakey and folks that were around him, that told these stories about Bird, But anyway, that's in terms of hurting his creativity. Of course, when you're playing with people that are unfamiliar with your moves, like Chuck was saying, beans and rice, I can anticipate you. That's gone. And what's left is just a high level of musicianship and respect, which is great. But there's nothing like a unit.
Yeah, absolutely.